Ladies and gentlemen, our program will resume momentarily. Please direct your attention to the stage. Again, our program will resume momentarily. Please direct your attention to the stage. Thank you.
Okay. I got the flag from the back that my microphone was on, so the show goes on. All right, welcome to the home stretch of our afternoon. We actually have some, the day has been fantastic, and yet we still have some crazy exciting things to talk about, including more announcements. So let's jump right into it. Our next presenter that I get to introduce is a very exciting topic. So we're really going to spice things up this afternoon talking about marijuana. Luke Niforatos. You notice I haven't said the last names of all the speakers, but that one is just extra fun. Niforatos. Luke, born and raised in Colorado, has this amazing life experience and educational background to walk us through his experience in learning. And as North Dakotans, it's a very interesting topic for us to get in front of it, have the conversation, learn, like what do we need to know to stay current with the things that are, coming across the nation. So, with that, I welcome Luke to the stage. Enjoy your time up here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Luke. It's nice to meet you all. Thank you all so much for staying this late. I promise you it will be an interesting presentation, and I hope it inspires a lot of great conversations both here and at home. I first off want to thank the Governor and First Lady for putting on this event and for their commitment to prevention and treatment. It is such a direly needed effort, and it's just so amazing to see this state out at the forefront where so many other states are lacking in this area. So you truly are the leaders today. I also want to thank the legislators that are here and that have stuck around as well, and other community leaders. And finally, I want to thank Laura and Pam and all the other folks in the background that have made this happen. This event has been fantastic, so thank you all. So, I'm a part of an organization called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. We're based in Alexandria, Virginia, just right across the river from Washington, D.C. And we are a nonprofit that focuses on smart approaches to marijuana, as given by our name. So that's me. We go by SAM so we can have more fun. And actually, I wanted to actually touch on this. So there's been an ongoing thread through the last few presentations on millennials. Yes, I am a millennial. And I will say this, I had an interesting exchange with a lady who was over 80 years old, and we were talking about just, what I was doing. And usually I'm fairly coy about what I do. I don't want to spark too many debates, with friends and family. But I thought, for sure she's on my side on this issue. And so I said, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I announced it proudly. And she said, I can't believe you're doing that. And I thought, you were all talking about millennials being the end of morality in this generation, and I'm the one fighting on this. It makes no sense at all. Anyways, I digress. So I am here today. I am from Colorado. I was there before, during, and after legalization of marijuana. I experienced that firsthand. I am the husband to the most beautiful woman in the world, I think, Eliza Niforatos. And my daughter, 17-month-old Shiloh, is the fuzzy-headed tornado that changed my whole life for the better. So it's with them in mind that I'm here today, and I really, want to talk more about them and our experience as a family in Colorado, which I'll get to later. But SAM, we were founded, we're a nonpartisan organization. We were founded by Dr. Kevin Sabet, who was an advisor on drug policy to the last 3 White House administrations. He also co-founded this with former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, as well as many other leading experts, including we have a very prestigious scientific advisory team as well from researchers from Yale and many other leading institutions that are actually doing the research on marijuana. And that's really what our organization is about, is a scientific cutting-edge middle ground approach to marijuana. We don't want to go back to the days of reefer madness. We don't want to go back to the days of bogus science. We want to focus on what's true, what's data-driven, as the governor so poignantly states, and we want to stick there and then encourage policymakers, decision makers, leaders, and folks like you to have the right information so you can share it with others. So we're a 501c3, and our mission is really to educate people on marijuana and the harms of it, and also promote smart policies. We also partner with these great organizations. I can just start off by telling you there's no national medical society or organization in this country that thinks that marijuana is a healthy or good substance for people to be using. So we enjoy working with the large majority of those organizations across the country. So we have really two sides to our organization. We have our education side, which is Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, where we really work with prevention groups. We work with community groups, schools, colleges, whatever it may be, and we provide resources. So we have one-pagers and data and all sorts of reports. We just released a major report, which I'll talk about a little bit later, on what's going on in the legalized states, which I'm going to highlight today. And then we have our action side, which is our political side, where we really go in and work at the federal, state, and local levels with decision makers, and we help provide them with smart policies and really equip them with the information they need. So let's talk about what our focus is as an organization. So often today you hear the marijuana argument, and you probably all have heard this: either we legalize marijuana and make it a total free-for-all for everybody to do whatever they want with that plant, or we just continue to throw everyone in jail that has a joint in their hand at any time. How many of you, that's pretty much the way you've heard it, right? Pretty much everyone. And so at SAM, we believe that that is a false dichotomy, and that's what our founder, Dr. Kevin Svet, really talks about. There is another approach than this just black and white thing. And so really what we need to first of all, is we need to classify what we're talking about. So when we talk about marijuana, we're talking about three different things. One is you have the criminalization aspect. So a lot of times you'll hear, let's legalize marijuana so we can stop putting people in prison. Well, first off, the statistics out there, less than a fraction of a percent of arrests in this country are done for just marijuana-related arrests. So it's kind of a misnomer that you hear out there. But regardless, we also agree we don't want to see people go to jail for having a joint in the confines of their own home. So you have that decriminalization side. So, okay, let's not put people in jail for marijuana. Then you have the second aspect of the conversation, which is the medicinal side. So, are we going to use marijuana for medicinal purposes? So that's a whole other conversation. And at SAM, we really believe that, it should be done through research. It should go through the FDA like every other medication. And there certainly may, and there's a lot of research and clinical trials out there, be uses for marijuana medicinally, and we fully support that research. Then you have the third aspect of the conversation, which is recreational use of marijuana. And so those are three separate conversations. They often get conflated. We need to make sure we distinguish them whenever we're having a conversation about marijuana, because it's not all in one. These are three different conversations, and there's three different sets of variables involved. So a lot of times we get this question asked of us as an organization. We're called Smart Approaches to Marijuana. We focus on one drug. We're making a big deal of it right now. It's a major topic in our country. Why are we talking about marijuana when we have this opioid epidemic? The White House announced this. The First Lady has been exercising her leadership, was in D.C. for this opioid commission, or opioid event that went on just a few weeks ago, and we're very grateful to her for that. So why talk about opioids, or why talk about marijuana in an instance of an opioid epidemic in our country? Well, it's a good question. People who use marijuana are 2.7 times more likely to go on and use harder drugs, opiates, later on in life. Now, that is not to say, again, let's take off our reefer madness hat, that is not to say that people who smoke marijuana are now going to go directly to heroin and crack. That's not the case. In fact, more than 90% of people who use marijuana are not going to go on and use harder drugs. However, if you talk to people who are currently using hard drugs, almost all of them started with marijuana. So there is a link there, and it needs to be acknowledged. Is it reefer madness? No. However, there is definitely research out there, and this is from very reputable group, JAMA, that peer-reviewed studies that have really found there is a link there, and we need to talk about it. How many of you have seen this billboard? Show of hands. Anybody seen this? Okay, I see a few hands out there. You see them everywhere. I'm from Colorado, obviously. See this all over the billboards and everything in Colorado. You see this in a lot of states across the country. This organization called Weed Maps just puts it up everywhere. Glad to know not everybody here is getting bombarded. But you see this stat out there, and it's supposedly from JAMA, and it's saying supposedly states that legalize marijuana are reducing opioid deaths. And so that's another common thing you hear in the conversation is, let's legalize marijuana because states that legalize marijuana are reducing the opioid deaths in their state or reducing opioid use. Well, there are a number of issues with this interpretation of that study, so we did a deep dive into it, and basically it conflated states that had very restrictive policies with states that had very permissive policies. It also completely did not factor in MAT programs, medically assisted treatment programs, and other programs that are aimed also at driving down opioid use. And so really, when you look at this interpretation, it's not an accurate interpretation and really does not consider all the data that's out there. So really, this is what it should look like. This, unfortunately, is my state of Colorado. We've seen opioid deaths increase. Now, here's a really good place to kind of take a pause. As we go through this data, our organization is not out here saying we have the final answer to what it looks like for legalization of marijuana in the states. The data coming out of these states is very, very early. So we do not have the final answer. We do not know 100% what's going on. However, our organization simply states that what we are seeing in these first 4 or 5 years of legalization for 9 states in this country, if you include DC, is very concerning. So you see things like this, and we can say without a shadow of a doubt, there's something that's very concerning going on in these states that are legalizing marijuana. So let's talk about marijuana's effects on public health. That's my background. I worked in healthcare, actually started a digital health tech startup. Not quite as successful as the governor, but learned a lot of great lessons. Very much inspired by what you've done. So the National Academy of Sciences did a massive 20-plus year study of over 10,000 different research studies done on marijuana and came together with this laundry list of health concerns and public health effects of marijuana. And really, when you look at use of marijuana, it affects so many different aspects of the brain. So we have, everything that you're seeing on the screen right now. You have brain development that's affected. You have appetite. You have, immune function. You have movement coordination. You have reproduction. You have so many different receptors in your brain that are affected by the use of marijuana. Now, we don't know all the things that happen with marijuana use. We're still beginning to understand that as the research continues to grow on this topic. But what we do know is that this is very, very concerning because the effects are not good so far. And when you think about the receptors that it impacts, it's some very scary stuff here. So another thing is, and this is established fact, there's a ton of peer-reviewed journal research out there on this. We see that psychosis is very strongly correlated with regular marijuana use, especially early on in age. So this is why the youth are so important, why that's been discussed a lot today. We've got to protect our youth from regular use of marijuana, from use of marijuana at all, and also adults, but especially the youth, because you see the numbers just explode when it comes to psychosis and especially schizophrenia as a result of increased and regular marijuana use. So a lot of people, this is probably another one you've heard, let's legalize marijuana because it's safer than alcohol. Alcohol has so many other horrible effects. We should legalize marijuana because it's not even as bad. But as you all know here in your state, you're contending with some issues around this issue of alcohol use, especially among youth. And it was really great to see the governor, First Lady, really hitting on that and focusing on those data points and trying to get them down and take care of the youth. And when you think about legalizing marijuana, we really need to think about those numbers as well. But what do we see when we have folks using marijuana? I mean, serious problems at home. Work, absenteeism, much more likely, with alcohol as a baseline, much more likely to have these different issues. So marijuana is not necessarily safer than alcohol. Another interesting thing is there was a bunch of research done over the last 30 years in New Zealand, all peer-reviewed research done, basically found that folks who were regular users of marijuana, so at least once a month, were more likely to be on social welfare programs, more likely to be absent from work, and more likely to go without college degrees. And they followed people from a very young age to well into their 30s and 40s. I mean, this was a very long-term study that was done. So, again, we're not out here, pushing kind of bogus articles in science. I mean, we go directly to the source on this and look to the researchers. And, when you go to the researchers, you are seeing a picture that is far less rosy than what you probably see in the media. So, I talked a lot about marijuana just in the last few minutes, more about marijuana than I think I've ever spoken in my life after starting on this. And when I say marijuana, that means different things to different people. So let's talk about what today's marijuana really is. So it's not this. I think when we think of marijuana, we think, a peaceful, hippie Woodstock days, long before my time, but so I'm told. This is what we think of, and during those days, the THC was really, 2 to 5% potency, not very potent at all. You have to take a lot of it to get really, really high. But this is the marijuana we're talking about today. And this is the marijuana that is plaguing my entire state of Colorado and every state that's legalized. So, show of hands, who thinks that this is marketed towards adults? No. This is going right for the kids. And you think about, from a marketing perspective as an industry, what do you want to do if you're starting a company and you have a product? I mean, I don't think that the governor would have made it as far as he did today if he decided that he only wanted his users to use his product once in their lifetime and never use it again. He definitely wanted them to use it more and more and more because that's what you get for a good product. Same thing exists when you have a for-profit drug industry like the marijuana industry that is now in the billions of dollars. So it's becoming much more potent. It's looking a lot different. Since the 1960s, it's done nothing but rise. And right now, the average is over 12%. But you look in states like Colorado and Washington and Oregon, and we're seeing edibles and other things that are in the 90 percentile THC potency range. So THC is the active ingredient in marijuana. It's what gets people high. We're used to doing a lot of research at much less potency levels. We are only beginning to understand what potency of 90% THC in something does to folks. It's not good. So this is what it looks like. You have waxes, you have crack. This does not look like the marijuana of the Woodstock days. And so it's very important to change any preconceived notions you have about marijuana. It's not just a plant in a joint nowadays. This is what we're talking about when we talk about marijuana. So again, we have drinks, we have ice creams, we have gummies that are all laced with THC. We have an industry that is pushing the potency of this, and unfortunately, they're getting their industry folks involved in the regulatory process. So there's, in Colorado, we cannot get a cap passed on the potency of THC in the marijuana products, which means they can just do whatever they want. They can have it as potent as they'd like. Very, very scary times. And this industry has continued to grow. So it is in the multiple billions of dollars as an industry. And I'll tell you from personal experience in Colorado, that money is being used to push their message and their products. So there are billboards, there are ads, there are television ads, radio ads, all pushing edibles, marijuana use, and basically insinuating that it's totally fine and it's not a big deal. So this is the new face of the marijuana industry, and I want you to take a hard look because that's not a hippie, it's not a peace-loving Woodstock person playing on their guitar. These are Silicon Valley executives, these are Wall Street executives with billions of dollars who are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into this drug for-profit industry. This is exactly what we saw. It's like a car crash being watched right all over again in slow motion with big tobacco. And it took us over 100 years to figure out big tobacco. I don't know who this guy is, but how many of you have heard of Joe Camel? That is what we're talking about, is this industry has literally taken every page out of the big tobacco playbook. They're pushing their products, they're using, mascots and characters to sell them, and it's guys in suits that are pushing, the money behind this and driving a profit. So how do they make their profit? Really good question. It's not through a very responsible, well-regulated, and careful approach to only people 21 and up, I can tell you that. We are seeing that, and it's a great comparison story. So with alcohol derives over 75% of its profits from 10% of its users, which is pretty scary if you think about it, especially given the issues we have going on today and with public health and substance abuse. It's just there's so many different things going on with that. And so to have 10% of the users making up 75% of the profits for alcohol industry, very scary when you think about that. Look what's happening with marijuana. 22% of the users are making up 67% of the profits so far in the early days with marijuana. So we're seeing this happen all over again. We have a big alcohol industry, we have a big tobacco industry, we're even dealing with big pharma, and now we're talking about maybe legalizing a fourth drug industry, big marijuana, and they're looking exactly the same as all these industries before. We've seen it before. Let's learn from history. So now I get to talk a little bit about what we've seen happen out of these states. And a lot of this is from Colorado because I've experienced it firsthand. I can speak to that. So I know where all these shops are. These are live pictures of areas that are not far from neighborhoods with young kids, with families. I've driven by all these locations multiple times. And so what we're seeing are pot shops galore. Pot shops everywhere. Very, very normalized. It is very normal to see pot shops on every corner, to see them in outlets, nearby to community centers. I mean, they're just, in fact, the one at the top, I believe, is nearby to the high school that my wife went to. In fact, I actually was back there a couple months ago, and we were just walking down Colfax, the street, and so you have East High School right across the street, and you have this pot shop right there, and there were about 5 or 6 high school students on their bikes hanging out right in front of the pot shop, and it really broke my heart. So, let's look at this. So in Colorado, there are 1,014 pot shops compared to a grand total of 600 Starbucks and McDonald's combined. So more than double. And that sounds like a lot, but let me put that into perspective for you. In Colorado, not a lot of people know this, over 70% of our cities and towns in the state of Colorado have banned recreational marijuana shops. Now let's look at that number again. 1,014 pot shops in 30% of the towns and cities in Colorado. So it sounded like a lot before. It is really, that's just pure inundation. They are everywhere. You cannot avoid them. You cannot miss them. In Washington, they've got a lot of coffee, so we'll give them a break, but you can see it's still a lot there too. What are the results? Commercialization is massive in Colorado and across the states that have legalized. Colorado is now the #1 first-time youth's use of marijuana state in the country. It's a 65% increase since legalization. We're seeing these numbers continue to grow across all the other legalized states as well. Youth are using marijuana, but especially that age range between 18 and 25. Those are the ones who are really lighting up a lot and taking in the edibles, and the usage is just skyrocketing. And really the science out there, we have these kind of somewhat arbitrary 21 and up laws, but the science out there really suggests that the human mind is developing to 25, and maybe even later than that, maybe 30. So when you think about this sort of use at 18 to 25, that is especially concerning because the human mind is still developing, and we have a workforce we have to get ready for the 21st century economy. So it's very, very important for decision makers. And we also have a thriving black market, which I'll get into here in a second. So as I said before, THC caps have failed. Limit on the number and location of stores failed. Gee, wonder why? It's because the industry is on the regulatory bodies. We can't get anything through. The money that supposedly comes from the taxes is being diverted to the general fund and being used for other things. We've just seen kind of a nightmare. So from the public health perspective in Colorado, we've seen a lot of, a 210% increase in poison control center calls. We've seen massive increase in emergency room visits. For anyone out there who works in healthcare and is trying to bend the cost curve, that's kind of a nightmare when you think about 30-day readmissions and you think about emergency room visits. The cost associated with this is not small. And this is just the early information that we have coming out of Colorado right now. Especially concerning out of it is that the large part of the increase in these emergency room visits and poison control center calls have to do with adolescents, so kids under the age of 17. So they are being affected by this. In fact, we just had a student walk into her elementary school the other day with a bag of gummies that was laced with THC, and she didn't know that. She thought that it was just gummy bears, and she shared them with her fellow students. So these are the issues that we're encountering. It's a weekly basis that we hear articles like this, that things like this come out in the news. And when you allow an industry to grow out of this, to push their drug product, they are looking to expand their base. They are looking for new users, and the only way that that can go is with the younger demographic, because they've got to shape mindsets and tastes so that when they grow up, they will become very solid users for a very long time. So drug driving is a major, major issue. So great to have RJ here from law enforcement. I was talking to him about the struggles that law enforcement are facing every day in legalized states. We have so many that reach out to us asking for more information on what they can do, because in Colorado, drug driving fatalities doubled as a direct result of marijuana related incidents. We also had in Washington, drug driving fatalities doubled as well, also directly related to marijuana. We've seen these increases just happen all over the board, where the roads are just not getting any safer. In fact, they're getting much more dangerous as a result of drug driving. These are things that we have to think about when we think about legalizing as a state do we have the resources and the manpower to be able to contend with this, A, and B, do we really want to add another substance that's a risk on the roads? So let's talk about what the effect is on the workplace and economy, because this is very important, obviously, for our country during this day and age. So, workplace marijuana use is on the rise. It is growing rapidly. It's much higher than even these numbers that I have up here. We just found some other statistics that found it in the double digits. So there's actually discussions of banning employers from being able to test their employees for marijuana, because in these legalized states, so many people are smoking marijuana, the usage is going so far up that they can't hire people. So accidents, injuries, absenteeism, disciplinary problems, all of that are all increasing costs. In legalized states, we're seeing that. You look at what the cost is to a company when their employees don't show up for work, or when there's a workplace accident, especially think about in healthcare or in any kind of service industry. It's very, very risky proposition. So in Denver, which is, that's where I'm from. I was living in Denver until just 6 months ago when I moved to DC. We are having a major issue with the downtown area. They were really pushing for conferences. They built a beautiful convention center. There are a lot of major events that come. There have been multiple major events that have rescheduled and relocated to other locations because the marijuana use downtown is so prevalent. It is so overwhelming that people don't want to be down there. So it's the number one complaint on the Denver website. This is the government website. It's on there. And then finally, to wrap up the workplace issues, we had our largest construction company, GE Johnson, their CEO came out and said, we can't hire anybody from in the state of Colorado because we can't find anybody to pass a drug test. So they are importing labor in from other states to take jobs that should be taken by Coloradans. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound right for North Dakota. So let's talk about crime and justice. Black market. That's another common thing you'll hear is let's legalize marijuana because right now it's being sold by drug dealers, and if we just get it off the black market, it will be totally controlled. We will be able to regulate it. It will be high quality. There won't be pesticides and other things in it, and will reduce crime. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. In fact, quite the opposite. In Oregon, over 70% of their market after they legalized is black market, and that's straight from the Oregon State Police Department report, which was leaked. You have in Colorado, the black market has continued to thrive as well. In fact, our state attorney general, Cynthia Coffman, came out and said, actually verbatim, she said, the cartels have continued, crime has continued to increase, none of this has decreased at all, the black market is still there. That's a direct quote from her. So we have not seen this panacea for the black market of drug use, that was promised to us when we legalized marijuana, at least not here in the first 5 years. So another thing is, you hear, okay, legalize marijuana, it's going to help law enforcement, it's going to decrease crime. Well, when we look at this, marijuana is actually the #1 offense right now in Colorado for public school offenses at 23% of them for the last year. So, there are a lot of issues that are related to that. A, we're seeing that youth are using marijuana, which is very disconcerting. B, we're seeing an increase in these disciplinary actions being taken and in other situations that occur from this. So, very, very concerning statistics coming out of Colorado schools. Social justice is a major reason we hear for why we should legalize marijuana. The disproportionate impact of arrest rates on communities of color is something that is very important, and it's something that is promised to be fixed by legalization of marijuana. However, that is not what we saw in Colorado. In Colorado, in fact, we saw arrests, first of all, go up 5% among youth, but they went down 5% among Caucasian kids, but among Hispanic kids, they went up 58%, and among black kids, they went up 28%. So again, this disproportionate arrest rate continued to prevail. So again, is this to say that it's directly related to marijuana? No. But the point is that to say that legalizing marijuana is going to solve social justice issues that are in our society is not the right way to go. It's not going to be the panacea for those things. Take a look at this map. So on the right-hand side, you have kind of the color distribution of where what racial communities live where. So everything green is Caucasian. Everything basically of another color is a minority kind of community. So you see kind of the ring around the yellow and then the blue. Now look at the picture on the left-hand side. All those dots are pot shops. Notice a correlation there, anyone? So who do you think the marijuana industry is targeting? They are not going to Beverly Hills, that's for sure. They are targeting the most vulnerable communities in our neighborhoods, the people who are most vulnerable, and looking to drive a profit from them. It's very sad, but that's truly the case. So tax revenue. Where's the tax revenue? Denver Post did a great article on why pot taxes aren't going to solve our our state budget problems. In Connecticut, we did a cost study and found that literally the costs almost more than double the revenues projected from marijuana taxes. There are so many different things that go into it. This isn't even an exhaustive study that was done, but we actually did another study in Rhode Island as well that looked at those costs. We have one we're releasing for Illinois as well. So we have a team of researchers that's really doing a ton of work into what are the hard costs of legalizing marijuana. And right now what we found is that these costs are extensive. And actually, to give you kind of a comparison case, when you look at alcohol and tobacco, those substances cost society $10 for every $1 in tax revenue. We are still paying for those things on so many different levels and facets of our society. So when we look at legalizing marijuana, let's not be fooled. Marijuana is not going to bring in the windfall that's going to solve all our budgetary problems. It's not going to bring in the windfall that's going to make education any better. We were told if you legalize, if you do the lottery taxes would take care of everything. That never happened. So really, at the end of the day, the jury is still out. Now, we set out because we were very curious to kind of understand the American sentiment on this issue, because you really hear from the news and from the media, oh, public opinion is shifting. Everyone wants to see marijuana legalized. They're tired of seeing people wrongfully incarcerated. They're tired of seeing all these things. They want to legalize marijuana. So we decided to set out and kind of investigate that a little bit more. So we decided to do a bunch of different polls in different states across the country, and we also did a national poll. Now what we did was, similar to what I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, if you'll remember, when I spoke about, we're talking about three different things. We're talking about decriminalization. Should people go to jail for having a joint? We're talking about medicinal use. Should it be used for medicinal purposes? And then we're talking about recreational use. So we split out those questions and gave people options. Because right now, the polls that you're seeing in the news are saying, do you support marijuana legalization? Yes or no? But that is far too simple. That is way oversimplifying the question. What really the question is do you want people, do you want to decriminalize marijuana? Do you want to see people going to jail for, having marijuana in their possession? Or do you want medical marijuana? Or do you want recreational, full, commercialized marijuana? Or do you want to keep it illegal? Those are really the questions that you should be asking when you're asking people what their sentiment is on marijuana. So what do we find? In New Jersey, we found an overwhelming number of voters in New Jersey do not want full-scale recreational marijuana legalization. Contrary to what we were told, somebody did a poll that was across the whole state, and yes or no, 60-something% of New Jersey folks said yes. But when we dive deeper into that and we asked the real question, which is, what are you looking for? Only 23% of people responded that they wanted recreational marijuana legalization. What they really wanted was decriminalization or to do nothing with the laws at all. Quite a tone shift. We did then another poll, and The Hill did some great coverage on this. We did a national poll asking, again, these same questions to Americans. What would you prefer out of those four different scenarios? And we found that over half of Americans supported alternatives to full-scale legalization. So either they wanted it to remain illegal, or they wanted medicinal, or they wanted to decriminalize it. We also did a great poll in, this one's in New York. New York had a very big poll that came out and said, 70-something% of New Yorkers, they want to legalize marijuana. Again, yes or no dichotomy, which is a false dichotomy. We asked them, we dove deeper, we asked them the questions, and you see the results here in the green graph. It dropped from 70-something% to 40% of respondents, and this was the exact same poll using the exact same respondents. We also saw in Illinois, again, another major shift. We saw people really move to saying, actually, you know what? I don't want legal marijuana at all. I actually just want to decriminalize it, which they already had. So, that's kind of what we discovered. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm here today, because I'm from Colorado. I've kind of spoken a little bit to my experiences there. But I said earlier that I'm here today as a husband and as a father. My wife and I were walking. We lived in Denver. We were walking down the street in our neighborhood, and my daughter was in her stroller. She's 17 months old. We were walking her in her stroller, and as we're walking down the street, a huge cloud of marijuana smoke passed over her stroller. And it just covered us. I mean, we couldn't avoid it. We couldn't get it. It was in her stroller. We knew her lungs were breathing it in. And my wife turned to me and she said, I cannot believe we can't even walk in our own neighborhood without being impacted by marijuana smoke on our own daughter and having to deal with the fact that that secondhand smoke is now in her lungs. And I turned to her and I just thought to myself, this isn't normal. This should not be normal. This isn't right. And this should not happen across the rest of this country. And so I urge you all, if you get nothing else out of my presentation, and I feel really honored to have been on the stage with such other amazing speakers. I don't feel qualified to be up here with them. But if you take nothing else from my presentation, please know that this is not the right way forward for your state. I don't want to see your families go through that either. I would urge you to pump the brakes and really think about these policies before we move any further. Thank you all so much for having me.
Awesome. That was very good. Very good. Good. Wow. Take enjoy that for
our full report on lessons learned from the states that legalize marijuana, and you can find that on our website, learnaboutsam.org. Be happy to share that as well. Thank you so much.
awesome. Luke Niferatos, ladies and gentlemen. That is fantastic. We said that we were going to learn today, we are going to be inspired, and I love those moments when you get new information that opens your minds, encourages you to think differently, and that is a fantastic way to spend an afternoon. So thank you, Luke. We are transitioning now into another hot topic in the country that really doesn't need much introduction because it is so pervasive, the opioid crisis. And we've got a quick video clip to show you what some of our local communities are doing on the topic.
Early in 2016, there was a cluster of overdose deaths that were very impactful on our community, and we knew that we had to do something to stop the deaths and to address the greater opioid issue.
And more people are realizing everybody's touched. You either have a relative, you got a friend, a neighbor, somebody that is suffering from addiction.
We know that over half of the people with an opioid use disorder get their opioids from a friend or a relative. Community needs assessments are huge. I think we often just start diving into the work that we do. You need to be out there, you need to be talking to people.
It is talking to pharmacists, it's talking to the community on how they take care of the drugs. Are they taking it back? Are they getting rid of it safely?
We have also been promoting Walk Monitor Take Back. So a take back location is where you can take back your unused, unwanted, or expired prescription medications, and it's generally seen as like a location that has a drop box. So a pharmacy, all of our local pharmacies have one. Also the police department and the sheriff department. Prescribers essentially, when someone comes in to them and asks for a painkiller or for an opioid, they need to go and check the database. In 2015, our North Dakota stats say that only like 23% of prescribers, DEA certified prescribers, were actually using that and checking that system before prescribing opioids. So that's been a really big thing that we've been promoting here in Barnes County.
Another thing would be Narcan. Getting Narcan out.
Narcan is the overdose reversal medication if you're having an opioid overdose. And so we have trained all of our schools, our police department, and gotten Narcan into their hands.
You know, the smartest spent dollar in this whole fight is on prevention. We have people in this funnel that haven't started, have started, and are in recovery. Prevention goes all the way through that.
Yes, yes, it does. Prevention goes all the way through that. And that video was a great segue into what is now our fourth announcement for today. Everyone here is going to go home with Narcan. Thank you. Big big investment by our Human Services Department as well, that we are going to have the training, the distribution of Narcan here today. It's also available at the viewing parties around the state. But not only that, it's important for all the individuals who are watching online, on your own, that this is accessible. From your local physician, prescriber, it is accessible, and you can take simple steps to make sure that everyone has it. This is actually a great social media moment. I'll go back to the other slide. Think about marketing. No, think about the fact that, any one of us at any point in time, most unexpectedly, can save a life. And so we, would do a service to the entire state by making sure our colleagues and our friends and our neighbors also know that and also can have access to this life-saving drug. And while I love to have fun up here, this is the part that gets very, very serious and why this is so important. You heard me talk about at the beginning, and the Governor and First Lady too, about our Recovery Reinvented event that we had this fall, and it was a huge success. Narcan was given out at that event, which was a Tuesday. A father went home with the Narcan that was given out at that event, and by Sunday morning, he had to administer it to his son and saved his son's life. So, yes, this is a really cool announcement, but it is so much more than that, and that's why we all have an obligation to be informed, to share it, and get it into the hands of many more people. So, thank you, State of North Dakota, for making that happen. And with that, we get to move forward into our... Yes, okay, slides are good. For the rest of the afternoon, with that, I'm pleased to introduce another local expert, actually right here in Bismarck, Dr. Melissa Henke, who works with the Heartview Foundation, an actual treatment facility here in Bismarck. Beyond that, I just want to thank her for being a leader on this critical topic of opioids in the country and helping lead our state through this conversation. So with that, Dr. Henke.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks. How did I make it go? Green button. Green button. Wow, this is a full house. Cool. Okay. Thank you guys all for coming. I'm sorry I haven't been here for the rest of the day, but this work does keep us very busy. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about opioid overdose, which has become my passion. We are losing someone every 12 minutes in this country to an opioid overdose. It's profound. It's not acceptable. So here's what we're going to start with. Didn't go. Okay. So 115 people die every single day in this country. Every single day. So we lost roughly, I think it was 56,000 people in the Vietnam War. We lose more than that every year to drug overdoses in this country. We lost almost 3,000 people in 9/11. We do that every 3 weeks with opioid overdoses. That's not acceptable, right? A life is a life. 61 people died in North Dakota in 2015. That's the last year I have data for. Last week when I was at the North Dakota Family-Based Services Conference in Fargo, they told me they thought it was 78 something, right? 77. So we're not making progress, right? So 20 to 43 to 61, 77. So emergency department visits for opioid overdoses rose 30% in all parts of the country from July 2016 to September 2017, right? So 30% in 1 year. And this is while we're realizing we have a crisis on our hands. So nationally, the death rate from opioid overdoses from 1999 to 2015 quadrupled. Quadrupled. Right? This is why our president has declared it a public health emergency, right? So the US claims 27% of the world's opioid overdoses, though we are 5% of the population. 27%. We need to get a handle on things. So here's a graph demonstrating opioid overdoses. From 2002 to 2015, you can see very clearly That number is going up. And here's the really sad part. It went up another 21% from 2015 to 2016. We've now surpassed 42,000 people a year, right? The numbers are they're not even slowing down. The New York Times predicts that if we don't get a handle on this by 2027, we're going to lose 90,000 people a year. 90,000 people a year. We're a state of 750,000 people. So imagine just wiping Fargo off the map, right? Because that's what we're talking about. So this is why we have Narcan, right? This is our antidote. This is what we're talking about. This is what you guys are all going home with, which honestly makes me get a little emotional. We've had Narcan for a long time. Since 1996, we've had it in community-based programs. Not in North Dakota in 1996. We're always a little, slow to jump on the bandwagon, which is not always bad. But from 1996 to 2014, more than 26,000 lives were saved by bystanders, normal people, not physicians, not nurses, not EMTs, normal, everyday moms, dads, brothers, sisters, spouses, right? 26,000, and I would guess that has probably doubled since 2014 because we are getting Narcan into the hands of people who need it, people like that dad after Recovery Reinvented. It is safe. There are virtually no side effects. It's actually very inexpensive. And I was just reading today, since the National Prescription Drug Abuse and Heroin Summit last week, the drug companies, there are two manufacturers of Narcan. There's an intranasal and there's an auto-injector. Both of those drug companies will comp the cost of this medication to people who need it. Now, there's certainly big pharma is going to benefit from this in some way, don't get me wrong. But they're saying, we'll do this, right? The Narcan nasal spray offered a box to every school in this country. Every school in this country. Now, unfortunately, some schools said, no, we don't need that in our school. We're not going to have that problem. But they have an AED in their gym. Do you know how many kids in this country die of cardiac arrhythmias a year? Not very many. You know how many kids are dying of opioid overdoses? Too many, right? We need more Narcan. We need to take our blinders off and realize this is happening in our hometown. There are kids in Bismarck that are shooting heroin in the middle schools. Ugh, right? That makes me sick. I have a middle schooler. But that's the world that we live in. Heroin is everywhere. It is in our communities. We need more Narcan. The Surgeon General made a public health advisory last week, a statement. For the first time since 2005, that the Surgeon General has come out and said, I have something so important that I'm going to make a declaration. You know what his declaration was? We need more Narcan. We need moms, dads, brothers, sisters, everyone, not just firefighters, EMTs, doctors, nurses. We need everyone to carry more Narcan because that's how we're going to impact lives. That's how we're going to save people. Because you don't know if you get on transit, if someone's going to need Narcan. The library, right? Who knew that the library needed to have Narcan? But that happened last week, right? So we live in a world where we need to have more Narcan. And again, you can give it into a vein, you can give it into the skin, you can give it into the muscle, you can give it into the bone, you can give it up the nose, you can give it any way you want it, and it works. So when we were trying to pass legislation in the state of North Dakota to make Narcan available without a prescription, so you could just walk into the pharmacy and say, I would like to have Narcan, my son is addicted. When we were trying to get this legislation passed, in that room there was 2 physicians, the rural EMS, the Board of Nursing, the Board of Pharmacy, the Board of Medicine, the Board of Medical Examiners, the Medical Association, a mom whose son died in a basement bar in Fargo. Everyone said, yep. Nobody said, we don't want Narcan. I don't know if you've ever participated in legislative events. There is nothing that we can all agree on, except Narcan, right? Everyone in the room said, okay, yeah, we need more of this because we're losing people. So since we've had that, now we have pharmacies participating all over the state that say, yep, you can walk in, you can get your Narcan without having to go tell your doctor why you need it. Because there's this stigma, right? This is what Recovery Reinvented is about, eliminating this stigma so that when people have a disease like addiction that kills, that is lethal, that they don't have to worry about the stigma. They can walk into their doctor's office and say, I need some help, right? So Narcan is going to allow us to save people's lives. So once they're gone, treatment doesn't help. Once they're dead, I can't help them. We have to keep them alive. So there's this argument that people say, well, if you give them Narcan, I think they should only get Narcan twice. Give them Narcan twice and then that's it, because you know what? They're just gonna go back to using again. Okay, so if I had a heart attack, how many times would you give me CPR? Once, twice, 3 times? I mean, come on, a life is a life, right? So if you save that person, then they have a chance the next day to come in and get treatment. But if you let them die, that's their legacy. That's not okay. That can't be someone's legacy. This is preventable. So I think they want to show you a video now on naloxone. I believe that's true.
Narcan nasal spray is not a substitute for emergency medical care. As with any drug, you need to be aware of important safety information concerning its use. Please see indications and important safety information at the end of this video. Also, please see accompanying full prescribing information in the use of this product. Narcan nasal spray is an emergency treatment for a known or suspected opioid overdose. The appropriate use of Narcan nasal spray can help you save a life. Narcan nasal spray is not a substitute for emergency medical care. As with any drug, you need to be aware of important safety information concerning its use. If you encounter someone who is unresponsive and you suspect an overdose, first shake their shoulders and shout their name.
Kevin.
Ask if he or she is okay.
Hey, can you hear me?
Check for signs of an overdose, unresponsive to touch or voice. Breathing is slow, uneven, or has stopped. Snoring, gasping, or gurgling sounds. Fingernails or lips are blue or purple. Administer Narcan nasal spray as quickly as possible if someone is unresponsive and an opioid overdose is suspected, even when in doubt, because prolonged respiratory depression may result in damage to the central nervous system or even death. Lay the person on their back to receive a dose of Narcan nasal spray. Remove Narcan nasal spray from the box. Peel back the tab with the circle to open it. Remove and review the printed quick start guide inside the package. Hold the Narcan nasal spray with your thumb on the bottom of the plunger and your first and middle fingers on either side of the nozzle. Do not press the plunger to test or prime the device. If you do, you will waste all or part of the dose of medication. Tilt the person's head back and provide support under the neck with your hand. Gently insert the tip of the nozzle into one nostril until your fingers on either side of the nozzle are against the person's nose. Press the plunger firmly to give the full dose of Narcan nasal spray. Remove the device from the nostril after giving the dose. After you have given this medication, seek emergency help right away. Narcan nasal spray is not a substitute for emergency medical care.
I'm with somebody who stopped breathing. I think they've had an overdose.
Move the person on their side after giving Narcan nasal spray. If possible, put their hands under their head and bend their upper leg forward. This helps prevent the person from rolling onto their stomach. This is known as the recovery position. Continue to watch the person closely. If they do not wake up or respond to your voice or touch, or if they do not seem to be breathing normally within 2 to 3 minutes, use a new Narcan nasal spray to give an additional dose in the other nostril. Acute opiate withdrawal symptoms may occur from use of Narcan nasal spray in patients who are opioid dependent. Symptoms include body aches, diarrhea, increased heart rate or tachycardia, fever, runny nose, sneezing, goosebumps, also known as piloerection, sweating, yawning, nausea or vomiting, nervousness, restlessness or irritability, shivering or trembling, abdominal cramps, weakness, and increased blood pressure. When the emergency is over, put the Narcan nasal spray back in its box and throw it away in a place that is away from the reach of children. In addition to watching this video, please read the quick start guide that comes with Narcan nasal spray before using it. Talk to a healthcare professional if you have any questions about how to administer Narcan nasal spray. Please read the indications and important safety information that follows.
Does everyone get that? Open it up, put it in the nose, push, right? It's not rocket science. We do things more complicated than this. Opening yogurt is more complicated than this, right? I mean, I had to change my pants today because some yogurt got on it, so I'm a little upset about the yogurt thing, but that's my point, is this is easy. If you can save a life by 3 simple steps, why would we say, okay, 2 times and then that's it? right? $40, that's what it costs. And if you go through the drug company, it might be free. So again, to reiterate what they said, this is not a substitute for emergency care. It is not, right? So we talk about half-lives of medicine. That's how long it's active in your system. So if someone overdoses on heroin, that half-life is going to be 6 hours or so. Narcan's about 20 minutes. What this does is it buys you time. It gets them breathing, gets oxygen to their brain and their heart and all of those vital organs that we have to live to be who we are. And it allows you time to call 911. It gives you that moment. It doesn't mean they're good to go. Again, when we were talking about this in the legislature, some people said, well, but what if they just have these parties and they give each other Narcan? Okay, no. They're not going to do that, and it's only 20 minutes. So an hour from now, they're going to be in the same boat they were in. So that's your window of opportunity, right? Time is of the essence. When we talk about CPR, it's time is muscle, right? If we don't get CPR to them, they lose their heart muscle. If you don't get Narcan to them, they lose their brain, okay? So if you're gonna say, well, you know what, I don't know what's gonna happen if I give the Narcan, so I'm just gonna wait for 911. If you live in Wishick, 911 might take a minute, right? By the time they get everyone paged and called and come from home, it's gonna take some time. Give the Narcan, right? Multiple doses may be necessary. There's 2 in a box for a reason, because sometimes people need 2 at least, or 3 or 4, right? Because the drugs that we have on our street right now are so potent. The fentanyl and the carfentanil and these drugs that are coming from overseas are so potent that you may need 3 doses of Narcan to get them breathing again. So when they talked about what an overdose looks like, what opioids do is they slow everything down. They slow everything down. So you can't keep your eyes open and your mouth gets dry and you don't breathe and your heart doesn't beat as fast and your blood pressure goes down and all of those things happen. So when you give Narcan, you might put them in withdrawal. Withdrawal looks like the opposite of that. Withdrawal means everything speeds up. So we might have vomiting, we might have diarrhea, we might be agitated, we might take swings. It might be unpredictable. I take unpredictable over dead, right? So if I give that Narcan and maybe they sit up and they puke on me, I already had yogurt on my pants today, so I can get a new pair of pants, right? I'll take my chances with someone puking on me or even hitting me if I know that they're gonna be alive to get the help that they need. So that should not be a hesitation to save someone's life. When you give someone CPR, you're gonna break the ribs and they might puke on you. Still gonna do it, right? I'm still gonna do it. So let's see, oh, that was the video. So then we have the Good Samaritan laws, and this is separate from the Narcan, and I put the Century Code up there because I just think it's fantastic. I have no idea what that says. What it means is, if you witness an overdose, you call 911, you stay and you wait for the first responders, 3 people in the room will be immune from prosecution for ingestion and possession. 3 people in the room, right? So why 3? I have no idea. I don't know where that number comes from, but here's what I know. I know that I grew up in North Dakota, and when I was at a party and there were lights and sirens, people scattered like cockroaches. So if you can get 3 people to stay in the room, good for you, they're good friends, right? You should stay with those people. The other thing that I'm confident about is that if there are 4 people in the room and our law enforcement officers arrive, they're not going to decide which one of you is going to jail. I am confident in our law enforcement that they will say, you did the right thing, and all of you can walk out of here today knowing you did the right thing, and you need to go get treatment because you had a problem, right? I am confident because when we had this through the legislative session, that is what our law enforcement people stood up and said. They said, we're tired of arresting people. They don't get better when we arrest them. We want to give them another chance to go out and be the citizens that they can be, right? So I put this slide up here just as a little gentle reminder that addiction does not discriminate. Every single one of these very talented, articulate, wealthy, beautiful people are dead. This is not a new problem. Elvis has been dead for a while, right? This is not a new problem, but it is not getting better. I could update this slide about every 6 months, right? I could put Tom Petty up here. We can add, Prince is up there, but we can keep adding to this, unfortunately. This is what addiction looks like. It doesn't look like the homeless bum on the street. it looks like your neighbors, right? Now, my neighbors don't look like this, but maybe yours do. But that is the initiative. So the White House just launched a website called crisisnextdoor.gov. And what this website is, it's an opportunity for the more than 2 million Americans who are battling with this disease of opioid addiction to tell their story. So you can go on this website, you can click on it, and you can listen to Darryl Strawberry talk about his addiction. You can listen to anonymous, random people from all over the country tell their story. Earlier today, I listened to a gal from Worcester, Massachusetts, whose parents both died. She was raising her niece because her sister and brother-in-law were both addicted. But it gives addiction a face, right? Because we don't get to have blinders on anymore, guys, and pretend like this isn't happening in our backyards. It's happening in our backyards. 77 people died in the state of North Dakota. Addiction has a face, and it affects every single one of us. Maybe not in your living room, but it's in your neighborhoods, it's in your churches, it's in your children's schools. It is everywhere that we go. And until we take a step back and say, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter what God my neighbor prays to, how much money they have in their pocket, what color their skin is, I'm gonna care about my neighbor, right? Because they're a person too, I'm not any better than they are, until we get to that point of saying, addiction is just like heart disease and cancer and diabetes. It's an illness and it needs treatment and it does not need judgment. Until we get to that point, we might lose 90,000 people by 2027. I am really not okay with that because in 2027, I'm gonna have a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old in my house. And I don't want them to be one of those. And I don't want them to be any of yours either, right? We have to do something and we have to do it now. The Surgeon General is saying, for the first time in however many years, he's coming out and saying, this is important. People are dying at a rate that is unacceptable. And we can save them. There is a medication, there's Good Samaritan laws, there are things that we can do to save lives, and we need to do it. So I just love this, this quote, "Never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So if this small group of citizens can go out and affect another small group of citizens and another and another and another, we can change the world, no doubt. Thank you. Obviously very appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, that was fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Henke. The passion and commitment there, I'm sure you all felt it, and that's what that response was. I know that I felt it, and once again, we're blessed to have these people right here in North Dakota. So Narcan, it's going to be in the lobby. You will sign for it, people over 18 years of age. It requires a little bit of training, but you just receive that training right here on stage, and so you are good to go. So the Narcan is going to be available in the lobby after the event. So we have had a chock-full day of learning and conversation and ideas. And if you've heard the governor talk, more than today, he often talks about the growth mindset, which really has to do with learning. I know personally right now it feels like my brain is a little bit exploding from all of the things that we consume today. And the key is now, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to take this home? How are we going to apply it to our own communities, our own families? Because the needs are different across our state. And it is time to act. So with that, we're going to jump into a little video to give you an overview of some of the resources that are going to be at your disposal when you go back home. We need to sort through what are you going to prioritize, what are you going to do first, and what is out there to help you do all of that. So let's roll this video, and then I'll walk through some more details with you.
Prevention is going upstream. It's a proactive approach, creating that healthy environment, and we know it works.
Through research, we've identified that the state has 3 primary substance abuse issues, and those are underage drinking, adult binge drinking, and prescription drug and opioid abuse.
primary prevention is a good investment. So for every $1 spent, you get a $64 return.
At the Behavioral Health Division, we provide a variety of free resources and services to the individuals and communities in North Dakota.
People don't know what to do. They know that they have an issue or they've identified an issue through their data, but they really don't know what to do with that. So the training and technical assistance staff can really help them identify some of the evidence-based strategies that they could implement to really make a long-term change in their community.
So we have staff here that can come and travel out to your community and help you as you initiate strategies or continue strategies.
Our website also has a list of resources which can be found at www.prevention.nd.gov. And here at the website you can find a bunch of information. We have a one-stop shop for prevention resources such as free toolkits, training materials, videos, handouts, and much more.
We also have things like ID scanners, which check for fake IDs or are used to identify fake IDs. This can be used by community members, retailers, or even law enforcement.
We also know that research has continually shown that parents are ranked by youth as the #1 influence in their decision whether or not to drink alcohol. So by creating the Parents Lead program, we are able to target parents and teach them the skills and behaviors that they can do to influence their children at a younger age. Our Parents Lead program also has a Facebook page and a Twitter page where individuals can also like and follow information and get more simplified information.
So individuals who are interested in substance abuse prevention, parents, teachers, law enforcement, policymakers, really any concerned citizen who wants to help make their community a better place. That's really who our audience is and who we have resources for and can work with.
The successes that we see are really the successes that the communities themselves are seeing. That's mostly because our job is to assist them and guide them in every way that we can. And so when we see their successes, it really is a success for us as well.
So there really is no wrong way to get a hold of us. You can fill out the request form on our website, or you can call us or email us.
There you have it. It's fun to showcase a lot of the amazing team members that are behind a lot of the magic you see here today. So kudos to all of those team members. I mentioned a lot of exciting announcements today, and I think we're up to 4. The Innovate Recovery Competition, the Parents Lead School Grants, the Text-a-Tip, the Narcan distribution, and now the Department of Human Services is releasing for all of you guys a new toolkit that is going to have a wealth of resources at your disposal to go home and actively start building your plans and implementing for the needs that are in your community. So actually, let's give them a round of applause, because wait till you see this toolkit. I've had a chance to play around with this myself, and it has great synergy with the work we're doing across other aspects of government, including the Main Street Initiative and building healthy communities. All of these things truly are connected. The toolkit really focuses on 4 key areas: targeting the problem using local data and assessing the local needs, finding the resources, which is connecting to the funding sources, the technical assistance, building the support, building those community engagements, the coalitions, the strategies and programs, and then doing what works. We've heard so much today about things being grounded in science, evidence-based, best practice, and you've got all of that here at your disposal. So this is going to be a great way for you to sift through all of the things you heard today and figure out what are the best next steps for your community to take action. And the even cooler thing is they are going to be updating this toolkit with new resources and information every 3 weeks. I rarely get anything done every 3 weeks at my house, so I am super impressed that they've publicly made that commitment. So thank you, team. A quick example of some of the cool things that are in there. You heard a lot of talk today about effective communication strategies, marketing, There's some actual like pre-made, ready social media type of posts that you can use for various campaigns targeting different audiences, whether it's the parents or the children, meeting people where they're at. So just a sneak peek at some of the cool resources that we have there. So with that, I'm about to say, to welcome up our closing comments. So thank you all for being fantastic today. I was just reflecting, joke, sort of not a joke, that I made at the start of this event, that to prepare for this, I had watched the Ellen DeGeneres host the Oscars, and I've been jamming out to the Greatest Showman soundtrack. That second part is true. I was jamming out to the soundtrack. And one of the songs came on. If those of you familiar with the soundtrack, it is at the beginning of the movie, and it's called, now I'm going to blank on it, A Million, Pam, what is the, million, somebody help me out here. A what? Yes, A Million Dreams. So, and it's when the child and then the adults kind of come together, and it's the two sets of voices. And the chorus, the phrase is, "A million dreams for the world we're gonna make." And that was the last, so I think it was meant to be, because that feels exactly like what we were doing here today. And it felt like a fantastic segue to invite the governor and first lady back up onto the stage to close us out and bring us home for the rest of the day. So, governor and first lady. Way less impressive than my intro.
Thank you so much.
You're so awesome.
Let's hear it for Jenny Olson. Great job MC today.
Yeah. Woohoo!
Office of Recovery Reinvented, thank you for being here. Thanks for leading us through today. What an amazing day. Thank you to all those incredible speakers we had today. Thanks to the staff. Thanks to the production crew. Thanks to BSC. Thanks to all of you that were watching. But what an amazing day full of content. Give yourselves a round. Thank you, speakers. I got thanked earlier for sticking around by one of the speakers, but we got all these speakers that are still here they all got to talk for 20, 30 minutes, but they got days and weeks worth of knowledge and experience. Well, they're still here. Come up and grab them afterwards and get their contact information, learn from them, ask them questions. But thank you again, all you guys, from flying in from around the country and being part of this day. Catherine and I, to close out, we want to talk a little bit about values and some values that will unite us all on this journey. And the first one that we want to talk about is humility. And when I think about humility, we think about two things. The first thing, which I know that all of you, if you're in this field and you do this work and you work with people that are struggling, you all have the humility to understand that you can learn from anyone. You can learn from someone who's in the depths of despair. You can learn from people like the folks that we met that are residents at the state penitentiary. I mean, we can all learn from anyone because we can learn about their situation. But the other piece of humility, there's a second level of humility that's much harder than just even understanding that we can learn from anyone. And that's the humility to understand that things that we may hold to be true actually aren't. And when I think about even, growing up in this country and what the kinds of things that I might have learned in school or in church or in the community about addiction, I mean, how many of us were told when we were growing up that, oh, if that person's struggling, it's because they've got some, moral weakness, they have a flaw, they're not making the right choices. Nobody was telling us when we were kids that, hey, that person's got a disease, they have a chronic brain disease. So we have to unlearn some things, and that's part of how, with the First Lady's doing to try to drop the shame and stigma, is we have to be the voices to help people understand that we have to have the humility to understand that things that we believed are really aren't true. And we have to understand that. We have to have humility that we can learn things. And part of that goes hand in hand, because if you have the humility to know that to question even the things you hold dear, then that can lead to a tremendous amount of curiosity. And I would say that one thing that all of our speakers had in common today is they've had the curiosity to dig into the data and think about things and challenge conventional wisdom. That's what our Human Services Behavioral Health team is doing. That's what our health department is doing. That's what all of our agency heads are doing, is we're driving forward with a lot of curiosity about everything we do. And we've got questions and questions and questions. And when we see the data, we question the data. And so bringing that curiosity every day, and that's part of that curiosity is what drove you here. Because if you thought you knew everything, you wouldn't have gotten out of bed this morning and taken time away from your work and your jobs to travel here. You wouldn't have tuned in if you're online. So I just want to say curiosity is what's going to help drive us forward. All of you have it. So thank you for that. Thanks for displaying that today. Another key element is courage, and certainly the First Lady knows something about that because she's had the courage to share her voice.
Well, I just want to say, it's been so rewarding, and I'm so grateful for the number of people that have come up to me today and said, told me about their own recovery. Some people have said, I didn't start talking about it, until I heard you talking about it. And, that's just so, it's the most important thing, I feel like. I've had this long career, but just doing that and making a difference and having, people making a difference in our communities because they're talking about their own struggles. Because again, the more we talk about it, the more we can normalize the conversation around the chronic disease of addiction. And then when those conversations are prevalent, like we talk about diabetes or we talk about, all these other chronic diseases, our young people will learn more about what that disease is. And that in itself could really impact prevention. And, so again, just normalizing the conversation, having the courage to talk about, to reach out, just to talk about how your lives are impacted by addiction. We are a small state of really caring and committed people. We can move the needle. We can make a difference on eliminating shame and stigma. And by doing so, we're going to save lives. We'll hopefully have a lot less overdose deaths, and we'll just have a lot more young people engaging in other things in their lives and not leading down a path of addiction. So I'm really grateful you're here, and thank you all for being here and committing to being here today.
The Dr. Henke, yes. Another way to use your voice is, as Dr. Henke said, when the group that went with her to the legislature to try to educate and ask for and get people understanding about the role that Narcan or naloxone could play. For those that are tuning in online, when she mentioned the library, if you're not from Bismarck, just in the past week or so, there was a 31-year-old female that was revived at the library by first responders who was found unresponsive, and her life was saved by naloxone. And there was an article prior to that, I think it was from Grand Forks, that there had been 16 people this year in Grand Forks who've been revived by naloxone. And again, we don't have all the stats to share today, but it is saving lives in North Dakota today, and we are, through executive order, trying to get naloxone out to every first responder, every school. We need to have it broadly across the state. It's not a solution, but it is a lifesaver that gives us a chance to literally live for another day as we work on longer term solutions. So thanks for everybody that's working on that. Another thing that I'd say, and that sort of fits in the curiosity and courage piece for the First Lady, you were just on social media and you ran across, you ran across the thing, Rep and Recovery, and where did that lead us?
So I was trying to figure out if there would be like a hashtag that I could use that would help people be more encouraged to talk about their recovery. And so I was researching hashtag Reppin, R-E-P-P-I-N, recovery. And I came across this only one other place that was using that hashtag. Some people are saying Repping recovery. But anyway, it was the first publicly funded sober high school in our nation, and it's in Las Vegas, and it's called Mission High School. So Doug and I had the chance to go visit the students and the faculty at that high school, and it was probably one of the most moving things and experiences I will have been through, because these 4 kids had the courage to get up and talk to us about lives that you cannot even imagine that a 16-year-old should have to have endured. And so, but anyway, but that's, you know, luckily we're able to encounter, and it's a part of our continuous learning about how can we, what can we do? Is this something we could use in our state? You know, and how can we, you know, keep learning to bring back, you know, good ideas that might be beneficial to help, you know, kids and families in our state. But I don't even know if that's what you wanted me to talk about.
No,
So
I
there
did.
you go.
But I was just saying, it was.
I was like
it was-
trying to feel you out a little bit to see what exactly. Anyway.
Well, it was an amazing day, and I think about humility, and I think about curiosity, because I walked in there that morning not knowing what we were going to see, to what a sober high school would look like. Clark County has 300,000 students in K through 12. That's almost triple in that one county that we have in our whole state. And through the courage of the students, along with the courage of some people in the administration, came up with this idea, and they launched it last fall. And the scale may not work here, but the courage is a relevant story. They had students across the district that were in families ravaged by addiction, drugs, gangs, gun running.
Human trafficking. I mean,
Yeah,
sex trafficking.
we met a woman who'd been trafficked by her mother.
She was 16.
So it was
for drugs.
Yeah. Come home with money or come home with drugs was the house she was living in. Anyway, the teachers got together with the students and said, we've got to create an environment. This one girl was a junior, and she'd only acquired 2 credits in 3 years, and she had only made it to 43 days of school in the prior 2 years. They came up with this idea to do it. They went to the school board to say, we should take this elementary school that's in a bad neighborhood that we're going to shut down anyway, and we should turn it into a sober high school. The kids that had these lives came and presented in front of the school board. They had community leaders there, and they said, so
we
we're going
should clarify,
yeah.
it's a recovery high school.
Recovery high school.
You know, yeah.
Recovery high school. But anyway, but you can imagine, I mean, this is again what these brave students, they had adults saying to them, oh, so we're going to put all the addicts in one school? You know, well, what about the people in the neighborhood? The neighborhood, they're going to want all those addicts in the thing? Oh, who's going to teach them? And one of the people in the administration said, well, we're going to make it open. Across our whole district, teachers who are in recovery can volunteer if they want to teach at this school. And they had plenty of teachers that were willing to do that who were in recovery. And you know what the adults said? Oh, so we're going to have addicts teaching addicts? You know, so anyway, the kids fought through, they went through. Finally, it got down to the final decision. There's an assistant superintendent who was 26 years in recovery who had never spoken about his recovery. And it was coming down to the crucial vote. And they said, what's this going to look like? And he said, it's going to look like me. I'm the face of recovery. I'm in recovery 26 years. I'm going to go help this school get started. We're going to go help those kids. They got it started last fall. So when we were there, the day we walked in, we were waiting to meet the superintendent. Okay, now picture in your mind what high school looks like in the rest of the country. If some kid walked in to the superintendent's office in the morning and said, good morning, I just wanted to let you know that I was using drugs last night. You know what happens in most places? I know what happened in our state. Boom, kicked out, 3 days, first offense, whatever, you know, no extracurricular activities, 6 week, whatever. You kick the person out of school and send them where? Because we're sending these kids back to this environment they're in. Gangs, drugs, broken homes, human trafficking. That's where they were going. You know what Catherine and I saw? They had on the wall, they had strings and they had pictures of the students. And on the string, he went up further. You moved your picture up 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 180 days.
But the bottom row where they start is just labeled, home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
So we saw a kid come in and tell the superintendent that he'd been using the night before. And he took his picture off the 30-day string, put it on the welcome home thing. She gave him a hug and he went to class.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Right?
So we have to have the courage the humility to learn, the curiosity to keep asking questions, and we have to have the courage to try new things and push for new ideas. But the one thing that we can do in North Dakota, as Catherine said, small state, caring, committed people, is we can work as one. Now, on a lighter note, I do want to say that this is hard for me to put a picture of the Hillsboro Burros winning yet another state Class B championship.
And why is that hard?
I don't know that we need to share all of my
Well,
trauma with everybody here, going back to my junior year in high school when we
I'm
lost
sure
by
there's a
4
lot of
points
people
to
here that
Fire
can
Team.
relate, so
That's
maybe
right.
you should just share.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to go into everything about it, but it was. I give you the score at the end of each quarter, the number of fouls everybody had, who missed free throws at the end, all that stuff. So anyway, but anyway, this young gentleman from now the Hillsboro Central Valley team, the Burros, made a 3-point in overtime from the corner with 3 seconds left. They were down 1, hit the shot, they won it. Classic thing, but that's what happens when we can work as one. Everybody here today, everybody across the state working together, we can make a huge difference. We've got the tools. You saw the 5 announcements today. We've got the community toolkits. You've got the support. If you've got ideas about new legislation that we need, talk to the Human Services team, talk to any of us, talk to our cabinet heads. Let's work as one. Let's figure out a way where we can lead the nation in this. Thank you all for the great day. Thanks for being part of it. Let's go out. Let's understand. Let's engage, and let's act. Thank you.